Welcome to the Pathless Travel Podcast. This week we feature the president of US Signcrafters, JT Trenery. Jeff, thanks for joining us again.
No problem, Craig. How you doing?
We are running this back. I'm doing well. This is your first podcast that you've done.
Yes, sir.
Well, maybe we'll launch your podcast career with this one.
Could be. You never know.
You never know. First question I've got for you. You know, as you start to look at leaders and people in your life that have helped kind of make you who you are or help shape and mold you, who was somebody or some bodies in the past that have just put tremendous amounts of belief into you? Who are they? And then maybe what were some things that you took away from those encounters?
Okay. So first I would say probably my father. As most of us, we always have a father there pushing us and edging us on to do better and better and better, and also there to help us through the bad times and the good times. So your dads are always good for that. Industry-wise, I had a boss when I was younger, in my late teens, early 20s, named Will Curdy, who always gave me a long enough leash to discover, learn on my own without costing the company too much money, which was always a great support, plus his accolades, if you will, on when something does work out. Just, I knew you could do it type of mentality. So if it wasn't for him, who knows how far, if I would have stuck in the industry.
Years ago, I was on this journey of like discovering and putting together like this framework of when I was going to become a dad, hopefully if I was blessed with that, of like what were some things that I could instill into my kids' life to hopefully years from them, then we'll talk about me. So what were some things that you learned from your dad?
From a physical standpoint, he really liked woodworking. So I think that's where early on I picked up my ability to want to either fix something,
right,
or build something. I'm in the industry that we don't use wood, we use aluminum, but it's not far off. So that's probably one of my favorite things that I think I picked up from him.
Got it. Well, tell us about US Signcrafters, and then maybe some milestones along the way that the company's had.
So US Signcrafters has been around for just a little over 30 years. It was started by a wonderful man by the name of Walt Faltinsky. He had actually bought a company out of Goshen. It was called actually B&S Signs, but I don't think the name BS Signs was really good, so he changed that quickly to US Signcrafters, and this facility was built here in Osceola. Some time into that, and I don't know the exact time frame because I wasn't around then, Walt had fallen on some medical hardships and needed to start finding someone to relieve him of his position here, and he had leaned on his son-in-law, Scott Franco. Scott Franco was here for a number of years. Once again, I don't know the exact amount of years he was here for. I knew both the gentlemen for a very long time, and 10 years ago, Scott had convinced me to come on board here to start doing basically what I'm doing right now.
So what was that convincing like?
Well, it was a two-part because I did have my own business at the time, and I was slowly and surely picking away at everybody else around here.
Right.
So for them to try to scoop me up was probably just a good idea for them at that time. I thought it was. It was also, oddly enough, it was a time where I just found out I was going to be a father, and I had just told my wife right before that the business I was running was growing so much that I needed to change course. And it was going to be, I'm going to be the dad that's never going to be here because it takes a long time to establish these sign companies, or I need to change something else. And oddly enough, in that maybe 2 weeks after I mentioned that, both the larger sign companies from here had called me independently on their own.
Wow.
So it was, signs on signs on signs. I make signs. So, when the time came, it was like, let's go talk to both these companies and see if either one of them looks like it would be a good fit.
So specifically, I mean, what is the scope of US Signcrafters?
The scope of US Signcrafters is we're a full service sign company, which means we come to you, We have sales reps who will help you through the design phase. We have designers here that actually design it, but they'll work with you on the design phase. And after that, we'll settle into how much it's going to cost for the project, and then we'll build it here in house, and then we'll install it ourselves.
Build it in house and install yourselves.
Yes.
So what's next? I guess what's on the horizon for the company?
Um, uh, on the horizon for the company would be, as generic as it sounds, one of my favorite sayings, which is more of the same, because we know what we do well, so why wouldn't we keep doing some more of the same? And incrementally, we just kind of take baby steps in the right direction, right? We dot our I's, we cross our T's, and we just move in the right direction when we're able to move in the right direction, whether it's in lieu of capturing more revenue and or hiring more people, which usually goes hand in hand. Not always the case, but just steps like that to gradually grow the company to get, I don't want to say bigger, like bigger is better, bigger and better.
Well, as you're looking at this, this gradual growth, what's the culture that you try and establish here or want everybody to buy into? What does that look like?
Well, for the most part, trying to establish a great culture at a small company can be very hard. We just don't have a lot of the resources that some of the bigger companies have. Minus, we don't, they have larger revenues and they're able to do more things. We're not at that scale. But for the most part, and I know we'll probably get in a conversation about employees, but they're all different, and to be able to relate to them specifically, not treat them as they're just a person who walks through the door, and make them feel comfortable, I think, and wanted, are probably the two biggest things, because then they have that purpose to come someplace. Like, oh, I know they need my help here today. I know I'm going to talk to Jeff about last weekend, things like that. And it's just not me. We have a good group of people here that conversate among themselves. So I think for a small company to build culture, just make it comfortable and make your employees feel they're living a purpose. And it doesn't need to be through their work necessarily, but the purpose, they woke up today, right? And they're going to come someplace. Don't be as monotonous as just having them do their job and then leave, right? Have the interactions, and get to know the people, and just make it a warm, comfortable place for them to want to stay.
You've been the president here since 2019, correct?
Yes.
What do you enjoy most about leading this company?
The thing I probably enjoy most, it really is seeing our final product out there someplace and seeing the rest of the company as happy about a design. Because we'll often see a sign go someplace and it could go up on a Friday, and employees will email pictures over the weekend. Like, hey, I went by so-and-so. Did you see how great the sign ended up turning out, right? I mean, we don't get to do that about everyone, because some of them are, kind of a low-brow cookie-cutter sign program, but some of them are pretty unique. And I think when the company sees that, everybody here kind of, perks up and says, we did that. There's not too many eyes, because it takes a sales rep and a designer and an estimator and a fabricator and an installer just to get things like that done. So I think everybody's pretty happy at the end of the day when we see stuff like that.
Is there a job that's unique that stands out to you?
There is. For our company, there's probably many. I know the everyone here would probably all have their different one. For me, it was the sheer fact of making a giant hamburger that went on the side of a building in Gainesville. And it was strictly due to the fact that our client trusted us so much that the phone call was, Jeff, I know you'll get it done. When I told him we did not do that. So we don't do that. And he said, Jeff, but you're our sign guy, and we think it's a sign. So just call me back with the numbers and the pictures. So we were able to do that, and that's just one of the things I appreciate when I get to have clients like that. So to me, that's my favorite one here thus far, but it'll be different for everybody.
I know you wear a lot of different hats at the organization. What's one of the more enjoyable hats that you get to wear?
My most enjoyable one is still probably sales and design because I don't necessarily, I have clients that I still tend to. I don't have to produce my own artwork, but knowing how to do it and the love that I've always had for doing it, it's just one of the things I do together. I think it makes the people that do work here that follow in my footsteps, it makes them better salesmen because they come back and they know how to do some of their own art. So for me, that's it. I love the interaction with clients. You meet all kinds of great people when you're a sign guy, all kinds of great people. So that's one of the things that I still enjoy.
We talked about the pros of leading. We've talked about the joys of leading. What's one of the hardest things about leading?
One of the hardest things about leading is definitely that all employees still have their own personalities. And it's like gathering a room full of different animals from a dog, a cat, a bird, an otter. They're just all different and they're all unique. And while you have to do things as a team, which is why I like the word coach, you coach them as a team, and then you can also coach the individuals along the way. So that's the biggest struggle would be that personalities are so different. Not everybody sees eye to eyes on everything, and somebody has to be the facilitator. Somebody has to step in and say, okay, let's pump the brakes. What do you think? Okay, what do you think? Okay, how about we kind of meet in the middle? And since I know more, technically maybe per se for almost 30 years, how about we'll just do it this way? So that's probably one of the things that's the hardest thing. I think for anybody that's has employees, and it's not the employees that are difficult by any stretch. It's situations that present themselves, and you just have to deal through those situations.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest parts of leading yourself, a team, name it, is not necessarily conflict resolution, but situational resolution.
Mm-hmm.
Whether when it's varying of opinions. Do you have a framework of how you approach difficult, hard conversations with an employee or within a team?
Yeah. So my quick answer to that is I don't have any certain approach that I like to do to that, and I like to be almost caught off guard as much as possible. So then everything that comes out of my mouth is as raw as I can make it, and there's no fact that I think he thought about that for a while because sometimes you get in these situations and you have people sit you down and talk to you and you're like, yeah, this sounds like you said this before, right? Like, so I just like to walk into the situation and blurt out what I have to blurt out about what's going on and try to resolve it in whatever circumstance it is and then just move on.
Well, shifting gears to just some more leadership specific questions. How do you stay sharp as a leader? You've mentioned in conversations you're just continuous learning. What does that look like for you?
For me, continuous learning can be anything from a trade show to our industry specific magazines that we get sent to us monthly to online resources about the sign industry. And overall, as a person and businessman, I go to the executive forums, which is a great platform for CEOs, CFOs, some small business owners, large business owners. There's all sorts of people in there, and a lot of good discussions. I've learned a ton from that program.
Okay, so growth, I guess if you could look back on maybe the growth that you've had over the last, I don't know, year, 2, 3 years, what areas would you say you've taken a big step in, and what you see yourself in the foreseeable future of taking a step in when it comes to just growth? It could be leadership specific, but just growth.
Sure. I think when I hear that question, one of the things I think about was, when you take over somebody else's position in the company, you have to worry about, who's with you and who's not with you. And while I was here for a handful of years before I took over, I know that I already had a lot of respect from a lot of the people. But after I took over, we still had to make some changes because we could tell that the happiness from everyone wasn't there. There were some problems with some employees that worked here at the time, and we unfortunately had to get rid of them due to their bad attitudes. And then you always have to question, like, is anybody going to be mad that I'm getting rid of the guy, even though he has a bad attitude? He's a hard worker. So am I going to get pushback? Like, is somebody else going to walk out the door because they think I'm making a bad decision? And ultimately, I mean, we just had the happiest group of people after that. Once you saw, it's not more true, and I've learned this, one of the things from the forums is that, one bad apple ruins the bunch. And if you got one in your organization, you have to rip that Band-Aid off. You have to get rid of that person just as fast as you can. I mean, we did it for way too long. And then the happiness of everybody just coming in, just mind blowing. I mean, my mind was absolutely blown that happened.
Yeah.
I mean, the pep in the step wasn't even the right word to use. I mean, we're flying to get places now. We're getting things done quicker. There's no long conversations about a simple thing. It's just let's do it. Let's look out the best interest for our clients and let's go.
Yeah, I mean, those decisions are hard to make. A book I'm reading right now, Jim Collins, it's Good to Great, and he talks about what takes good companies to the great level, and then also keep them there. He calls them level 5 leaders, but then also having the right people on the bus.
Oh, yeah,
and
sure.
And you just can't sacrifice that. Obviously, addition by subtraction is what you're talking about right now with that situation. Do you have a favorite failure that you can point to?
Oh, for sure. When I was approached by a sign company out of Fort Wayne to start selling signs, and at the time I was just a sign fabricator, grew up inside of a shop, and could still use an art program or use a CNC router and weld and paint and light something up and all that fun stuff that I love to do. And when this company had approached me, I kind of asked them why. And he said, we heard you clean up well and you're very knowledgeable, and we're looking for this person to go out and do this. So I took a position with them. It lasted about 2 years. It didn't work out. I was let go. I remember it great because it was the only job I was ever let go from. But I don't blame the company. And in fact, I just actually talked to him last week about dual working on a job in Fort Wayne. It just wasn't working. It wasn't their fault. So that little push right there to get out of a comfort zone and to get into another one is, without that, I would not be sitting here having this conversation. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, what about something that you're most proud of? It could be here within the company, something in your personal life. When you hear that question, what comes to mind?
I think the first thing that comes to mind when I think about things that make me proud would definitely be, first is my family. Raising a couple kids, watching them go through the trials and tribulations of growing up in life, and the good moments and the bad moments and the things that they do learn from you and the frustrating things that they don't. At the end of the day, it's fun. It's very proud dad moments, that's for sure. And then as far as business goes, I'm really proud to be a part of US Signcrafters. We have so many great, what we call sign guys in this group right here. I mean, we have a ton. Most of the people that work here have all been in the industry probably for 20 plus years. So we're just a very knowledgeable group. We've been there, done that. We've made that mistake. We know what we need to do now going forward to make sure that everything works out just fine. And if we ever do get into a project where we haven't done it before, we're pretty upfront with you. And we're going to tell you, hey, we haven't, hung a 100-foot letter off the side of a building in this fashion before, but we think we're comfortable enough. We think we can get that going for you. So we definitely don't beat around the bush when we're ready to do work.
Well, you obviously, we've talked about it. You wear lots of hats, and being a smaller business owner, I mean, you're this probably becomes a big part of your life, or some would say your life. How do you recharge? I mean, what are some things that you do to break away from the action if you're able to?
Yeah. So it's difficult, when you're a business owner, especially small business. There's always something on the plate to do, which I think is probably lesson number one. Don't ever think that you can clear the plate for the day. It's always there. So just be better equipped to handle those times, even if you're taking vacation with the family or just hanging out with the family. Um, just be mindful that you probably should still do something at least for some part of your day, even if it takes you 5 minutes, to just send a group of emails off to people in the morning to get those answers that you need. Because to leave things completely unattended when you're a business owner is probably just not the best way to go about it, thinking you're the owner and you don't have to do it. I would actually say that most of those guys probably don't last long in business for that reason, of thinking that somebody else is always going to do the work. So just take accountability for what you know you need to do. And as far as recharging, for me, it's really just hanging out with family in some fashion, whether it's, going camping with the kids, on a vacation with the kids, my family, my wife included, obviously, or sometimes me and my wife might just go someplace. So that's about as close as I think I can get to actually doing that, recharging. But also is knowing the times that it's when you're in the recharge zone, right? Like, don't get it confused with other times.
Yeah.
So when that opportunity presents itself to you and you're a busy person, start recharging and start kind of soaking that up. I know a lot of people do a lot of different things. Maybe somebody wants to golf or read a book or whatever. I don't overly do it, either of those things, but I get most enjoyment out of watching one of my kids play some sports. So.
Do you schedule this? Do you look at a full year's calendar and say, here's, where we're going to take some time off? Is it more of a, gosh, I just don't have much of my left in the tank. I've got to plan something here in the next couple of weeks. Do you have any
No.
framework for that?
Yeah, no. Think about it often. Think about it very often. Schedule ahead, plan ahead. I do the same thing the rest of everybody that works here. I go around yelling at them, the people that don't take time off. I'm like, you're absolutely crazy. Why would you not take time off? Like, we shouldn't be at the end of the year and you guys have 2 weeks of vacation time. Like, it's unacceptable. Like, just, you're supposed to take time off. I don't care if it's just one day, whatever, and this and that. Take time off. It feels good. I mean, to the best of your ability. And for a lot of people, like, if you're whatever other role you have here, you could probably take the day off and not really have to overly worry about what's happening while you're gone. Right? So fully recharge. Come back feeling better. But no, take those days. We're booked out probably a year or two all the time trying to get stuff done. So
Well, I've got just 3 final things here, questions for you. If you had your own billboard, what would your message be?
So one of my favorite sayings that I saw a couple months ago that I love right now, because I think it's as true as you could get, is the fact that, I forget who said it, so I'm sorry I can't tell you who it said it, but it said, money is not the goal. Freedom is the goal. Money's the tool. I just often think that so many people, especially nowadays, chase money and they end up just complaining the whole time that they're doing it for whatever the reason is, right? Like, just numerous things, right? Like, I can go over here and make more money doing. Okay, well, go over there and make more money doing. If that's what you need to chase in your life, the money, then go chase the money. But it's just really the tool. It's money in my wallet and a hammer in my hand do the same thing for me. It's just a tool to help me get to the next spot I need to go to. So, which is probably a mindset that, without even knowing that, I think I adapted a couple years ago, because you start realizing when you start losing family members that how short life is, and we never know when it's our turn, and what, you're just going to work all the time and make a bunch of money, and that's what they're going to say about you at the end. Hey, he was a great businessman and he was wealthy. Like, I don't want anybody to say either of those things about me when I go. I think there's a lot more to me than money or business that I hope somebody would say about me than those things. So.
What would you want somebody to say about you when it's all said and done?
I think ultimately, and I was just at a service the other day. It was actually for my grandfather. He had passed away months ago, but they were snowbirds, so they were in Florida, so they were
Okay.
able to do the memorial until just this last weekend. And my aunt gave the eulogy, just talked about how he was a complete, I think she said complete man, but person in general, right? And she just was able to speak a lot of how complete he was as a person and not really have to overly highlight that he was in the Korean War or firefighter, did this,
Mm-hmm.
She really just stuck to how complete of a person he was, which I think ultimately is what you probably want somebody to say about you.
Last question I've got, and it's really more of an open forum here. What leadership things would you want to communicate to any listeners? Maybe it's advice to a younger you. Any just final thoughts here before we close?
For anybody new getting into any kind of leadership roles, and probably not as specific for people who are looking for it, as though some people are thrust kind of into that. The opportunity comes and you really weren't looking for it, but it's there now. Is that it's just a ton of trial and error. No matter how great you think you are, or what business it is, or it just doesn't matter. It's trial and error. I often joke and say some of the biggest, best business people that I could think of, from a Jeff Bezos to a Warren Buffett, have them come in to do what I do, and they're probably going to be as lost as anybody else. It's just not what they do. Just because they do that one thing really well doesn't mean they can lead anything really well. That's what they do really well. This is one of the niches that I found out I do really well, and everybody has their own. But I think when you talk about leadership specifically, I think it's just something you learn as you go. Yeah.
Well, I thank you for taking time out of your day to do this, share a little bit more about your story, a little bit more about US Signcrafters. Looking forward to launching this podcast, so thank you again.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, that's it for this week's episode of the Pathless Travel Podcast with the president of US Signcrafters, JT Trenery. Until next week, have a great day.